what I'm going to be doing now is talking you through how do we activate against the insights and the segments that we've created so far during the demonstration. So to do that, I'm going to be introducing you to what we refer to as application services. And these are new features that are built on top of platform to enable execution of customer interactions across not just the Adobe ecosystem, but also third-party applications you might have within your business. And this is a really important mantra of Adobe Experience Platform. It's designed to be an open platform because we're investing so much time in creating these rich customer profiles. One of the things we want to make use of those is across the entire business. So that's why so many of you had questions around integration with call center applications and maybe in-store applications as well. So this is designed to be an open platform, and the application services that I'm going to show you in a few seconds' time are designed around enabling the activation of those direct through Adobe Experience Platform. So what we've seen already is the ability to build up a profile around either anonymous device-based visits to your sites or digital properties, all the way through to being able to collect information around logged in users or people phoning into call centers or interacting you in brick and mortar stores. And on my screen, you'll see that I've got myself that on Luma Telco, same site that Wouter's been using. I've logged in with my email address and I've shown an interest in broadband. So as Wouter showed you in the background, when we go and launch Adobe Experience Platform from the same place that you launch your other Adobe Experience Cloud investment and get taken into the home screen, we've got the ability to see all of those rich segments that were described a minute ago. And I can filter those down to find those just related to my part of the business or me personally. You can see a couple of segments I've created around anonymous visitors that are visiting our website and are showing an affinity with broadband, for example, or in this case, because I've authenticated, you can see I've logged in and you've captured my email address and that's available. So I know that's someone that is a profile we found in the platform. My preference of language is using known profiles or unknown profiles rather than anonymous users. But the same language can be used everywhere. So how can we go and activate those and do something with those segments? Well, one thing that you can do is you or your partners can actually develop your own applications through AEP. It's an API-first platform, and I'm sure that we'll see a lot of interesting applications being built up by our partners. So those segments, the key thing there is that these segments are streaming. So these are being qualified in real time against everything that's happening against that profile, be it time-based behavioral information or things that I'm doing in my profile, like I'm suddenly registering an interest in a particular product. So what can I do with that? Well, when I want to go and activate that, I've got a couple of different methods of doing so. One is to use Realtime CDP. Now, a lot of our customer interactions at this point in time are being based around a CDP conversation. And as you'll see throughout this presentation, and something that came up in the chat is, who are the competitors of Experience Platform? Well, actually, a platform does the customer data platform side of things alongside a lot of other functionality that we're going to discuss around the analytical side of things and machine learning later on. So if I go into my destinations folder just here, you can see all the different types of destinations that I can connect to directly from platform. So these will be things like Facebook, advertising platforms, and these are places that I want to execute a segment once it's been qualified. So here I've got someone that's come onto the site, they've shown an interest in broadband. Maybe there's someone we know as a customer already and we want to, that's a cross-sell opportunity for us. Or maybe it's someone that has just visited and we're building up an anonymous profile around that individual. So one of the things that we can do here is we can go and start to make an advertising campaign off the back of this. So these are individuals that we might want to come in and execute a campaign based on segment qualification. There's a couple of ways around I can do this, but if I go into my destinations folder just here are all my destinations that I've set up, and you can see I've got a Luma DV360 that I created just to ease the use of this in the demonstration. So what I can do here is I've got a destination maps, Google advertising destination, and what I'm going to do is select the segments that I want to activate against this. Now, one of the key things when I actually go and create that destination is I say, what type of destination is this? Is this a destination that might be using third-party data? Is it a destination that's going to be linking to an email platform, for example, and connected to PII? And what that does is it limits the segments that you can actually export out of that. A really important differentiator between what we're doing when we're activating segments in Experience Platform versus creating them is when I create my segments, I can use any data that's available to Platform. But when that's mapped into Platform, it will have various labeling and enforcement policies applied to it, which limit the use of that data within your business. And that's really important because when we're thinking around data lakes that you might have and that might exist within your business already, they contain a lot of rich information that might not be able to be activated on channels like email, for example. So in here, I'm going to choose my segment that I showed you a few seconds ago. And this time I'm going to choose the unknown profile because I'm really focusing on doing offsite advertising to those people that have been to the site and shown an interest in broadband, but we don't know as a customer right now. So if I click on next, I've got the ability to say, when do I want to start this? So I can schedule this to start the campaign at some point in the near future. So if you've got a brand new product launch, for example, I might be using Platform to create a segment of people that might be interested or show an affinity with that particular product, or whose mobile device, for example, in this case, is older than a certain age, and I'll be targeting them with the new iPhone or the new Android phone advertisement. So here I'm going to select that segment, define the start date for that, which is absolutely fine here. And if I click on next and finish, I've now enabled that anyone qualifying for this particular segment will be immediately pushed through to that advertising destination. So if I have a look at the destinations catalog, there's a lot of different destinations within that catalog, and we're adding to that all the time. An interesting view of this is through this screen just here. And what this is showing is all of the different sources that I have connected into my Experience Platform, how they're being resolved against profiles, and then what we're doing with them from that point onwards and the kind of platforms that we're integrating with. And you'll see that here, not all of these are Adobe technologies. Once again, important piece is that this is designed to be an open platform to work with whatever your ecosystem is right now. So that's one way that I can activate a segment. I can push that out to advertising destinations, ESPs, and social media platforms. And that works absolutely in real time through qualification to that segment, which is great. Another way that I might want to make use of that is if I have existing investment in Adobe Experience Cloud technology, such as Audience Manager, Adobe Target, I can also make use of any of these segments through those applications as well. And the way that I do this is if I go back through to my picker just here, every single segment that you define within Adobe Experience Platform will be available in what you might know as the People Core service. So anyone that qualifies for a segment that we've defined in Experience Platform using all that rich data and time-based data will then be a segment that's available through the People Core service. So just here, if I go into another Adobe application, such as Audience Manager, a few things came up on the chat pod around why do I need real-time Audience Manager if I've got real-time CDP? Well, one of the answers to that really is around Audience Manager's rich heritage in using third-party data to expand audience reach. So here, if I go and have a look at my audience data, just notice that within Adobe Audience Manager, wait a couple of seconds time. Just check that I've still got internet connectivity. Well, anyway, within Adobe Audience Manager, I have the ability to come in and view all of the segments that are available to me through Adobe Experience Platform. So I'll just log in again, just in case I've been logged out. Behind the scenes, safety first. So if I come in here and have a look at my segments just now, then you'll see that any of the Experience Platform segments that were created were available in real time and streamed directly into Audience Manager. And that's really useful because it might be that I've got existing investment in Audience Manager, and this is my platform of choice for being able to execute those kind of advertising campaigns. Another thing that might happen is that it might be that I want to use Audience Manager because I'm really looking to acquire new audiences that have shown affinities for certain products or high value customers that I've identified in platform. And Audience Manager has the ability to bring in data from third parties and expand audience reach in that way. So just here, I've got the ability to go and look at that segment, and I can then go and map it to a destination, or I can combine it with other traits that I'm collecting in Audience Manager, such as ad impression data in order to do so. So just there, I can go and create my destination and save that in Audience Manager, and that's available then for in real time for any segments I define in platform are streamed and then made available through my existing Adobe Audience Manager infrastructure to push out. One of the interesting questions that we get is, well, do I need Audience Manager if I am not using third-party data? Well, it could very well be that Realtime CDP will actually be able to handle all of your requirements around being able to execute ads campaigns off of the back of segmentation experience platform. It's a little bit of a nuanced answer, so always speak with your Adobe contacts to find out what scenario best meets your business use case. So if I just execute that right now, that's now anyone streaming into that segment will be made available via Adobe Audience Manager into Google Platform. Another key aspect of this is, well, how do I execute personalization campaigns off the back of this around if I've got investment in products such as Adobe Target? So ways that I can do this is if I go into Adobe Target right now, and Adobe Target, just to give you a little bit of context, is personalization engine to personalize primarily web and mobile experiences. It enables you to do A/B testing and automated personalization based on different variants being and machine learning to figure out the best creative to put in front of different individuals. So one of the things that I'm just going to do here is I'm going to create an experience targeting activity. And experience targeting is one of the most basic kind of forms of personalization that you can do using Adobe Target. But what this means is that I can go and amend, if I wait a couple of seconds, I can take my website that we have just here, and I can take any aspect of it and personalize it based on segmentation that I've defined, in this case in platform. So key thing here is if I just had Adobe Target within my business right now, I would be able to use Adobe Experience Platform to define really rich segments and then use that to personalize experiences on my site. So I can add experience targeting just here. In a couple of seconds time, you'll see all of those segments that are streamed through from platform. And here, maybe if when they're logged in, when they authenticate onto the site, or if I know them as a customer, I'm going to personalize this banner and change the content based on the kind of messaging I want to put in front of them. In here, maybe it's someone that my segment's defined where I know they're existing mobile customer, but they're showing an affinity with broadband. So maybe that's a great opportunity for me to sell them into a bundle or something like that. So here, wait for my images to load up a couple of seconds. and I'll choose a nice image to create your own bundle, and then that then will be personalized to anyone that falls into that particular segment. Best practice there, of course, is to start to do testing, test creative at that stage, see what creative is working best with those audiences to push them to the desired goal for you in your business. Everything that we do at Target, of course, is goal activated, goal driven. So we can say then, well, actually what we want to do is we want to test conversion there. So if we are doing any sort of testing using Target, we can create that segment of those people that are interested in broadband that have an existing mobile contract. And then we'll target creative and we'll test out various creative variants depending on who actually goes and converts and buys into that package that we're selling. And if I save and close that off, that will then be available for me to use. So that's giving you a brief glimpse in how we can use those segments available in Adobe Experience Platform and either push them out directly from platform to advertising destinations and social platforms or ESPs using Realtime CDP, or how we can use the existing investment you might have in Adobe Experience Cloud platform and technology in order to make use of those segments. Like I mentioned, all available across those different digital solutions. So taking a little bit of a breather just there, the next side of things is right now we've been focusing very much on kind of the business as usual kind of campaigns that you've probably used to running already around audience activation. Just take a quick pause to talk around, what are the additional features that you can make use of here that might not be something that exists in your existing investments already. Well, one of the really primary ones for me, and I've got an Adobe campaign background, is that currently when I share a segment from some tool like Audience Manager or Analytics, I miss all the context of what's happening there. So remember when Wouter took you through creating a segment in Experience Platform, one of the things that he showed you is that we can include things like what product that were they looking at that qualified them for this segment. And that can be passed across to any of the destinations that we're using through Realtime CDP. So in that case, if you're using Adobe Campaign, we can then see what product drove them to qualify for a segment and use that to personalize an experience in the campaign. Similarly, we can use the context from that to define a strategy of personalization in any of the other platforms as well. The next level of this really is something referred to as Journey Orchestration. So this is an application service that got launched with Platform and made available earlier this year in EMEA. And Journey Orchestration is taking us away from kind of segment-based approach to activating an audience through to something much more one-to-one. Journey Orchestration enables me to define events that currently customer initiated. So I walk into a geofenced area, I've just gone into your store and I've hit a beacon, or hopefully not literally, or I've just signed up to a newsletter and I want to take some action off the back of that. So currently, if you're using platforms like Adobe Campaign, for example, you can absolutely do that. We can hook via API into Campaign and trigger out a communication that says, yeah, this person's just signed up for an account. The thing that we can't do so easily with a tool like Campaign necessarily is start to do testing of messaging, or if I want to be a digital first business, it's great that they've just hit a geofenced area, but maybe I want to decide, do I send them a push notification now? Do I send them an SMS? What opt-ins do we have? What permissions do we have to contact that individual? So here, I'll talk you through Journey Orchestration and how this works. And it's a really great application for starting to do some really next level things within your business. So Journey Orchestration itself, I'll show you the exciting bit, which is the canvas where I draw out a real-time journey in a couple of seconds' time. Basically, we need to have, one of the things that we can do in Journey Orchestration is we can define external data sources that we want to pull in. So for example, here we're linking into a weather API. So when someone enters a geofenced area, I'm not just going to hit them out with a message. I'm going to take into account something else that's happening, like maybe stock in that particular shop. Maybe it's browse behavior, things they browsed previously, or maybe it's what's happening with the weather. So a great example of this is maybe I'm sending out a message around a sporting event, and someone's just turned up to my, when we get sporting events back, someone's just turned up to the rugby at Twickenham, and they're going into the stadium, and maybe there's some player information that I want to push out to that individual. And maybe I'm hitting an external application that's giving me some more insight that I want to push out just to really make that experience for that customer brilliant. So in this case, we're using a weather API, pulling out to the open weather map, and retrieving some information that we're going to use in those journeys. What's going to trigger these though? So this is something that's configured and then used by marketers later on. So it's configured once, used many times. These events are things like geofence areas that we might want to make use of, or events like they've browsed or abandoned basket, or they've just created an account, or maybe they've just qualified for a segment and we want to do something with that information. And then what's the action we want to take? So here we've got things like integrations with Adobe Campaign, obviously, but this is really highlighting the fact that we can integrate with any external application. So it could be that you have Microsoft Dynamics and something happens with a customer and they've just come off a call and it's been a bad interaction. So what we want to do is we want to flag them as being suppressed for marketing communications. And we also want to push them into a case queue in Dynamics for someone to go and contact them because they're a high value customer. In this case, we're pushing into an SMS channel via Twilio, which isn't Adobe technology, and also Slack as well. So here's where we define those outputs that we want to do. And they don't have to just be messaging channels. They can be any activities such as changing a display in a shop, for example. So how do we actually go and execute these campaigns? Well, let me go and search and limit this list down and give you a couple of quick examples. So I'll start with a really basic one, which should be familiar to you, and I'll show you how we can add value using journey orchestration. So right now, it's a really linear journey. It's something you could do absolutely with Adobe Campaign or any ESP at the moment, which is someone signs up, our tech guys have got an API firing into that email platform, and they're sending a welcome message. If I go and create a new version of this, or if I go and edit it, one of the things that you'll see is when I go and click on this email message, because we're using Campaign, we have a tighter integration with Adobe Campaign, which means that I actually get a list of all of the available transactional messaging templates available within Campaign, which is kind of nice. But I want to do a bit more than that. I don't want to just send an email. Something that's a limit, like I mentioned currently, is I can't do things like I can't test my transactional messages. Like I want to optimize that first message because it's important. So one of the things that I can do is my event here is the event that I created earlier, account creation. When this happens on the site, this will trigger this journey. And I'm then going to use a condition. I'm not just going to fire out a single email. Yes, I am going to send out my standard welcome email, but I'm also going to change it so I do a percentage split. And maybe I just do something really simple like a 50-50 split just here. And instead of just using a standard email there, my action is going to be, I'm going to send out an email, yes, but this time I'm going to send out a slightly different message. So maybe me and my colleagues are having a competition, you know, we're competing against each other to see who can increase people that are clicking through from that email. When I do that, all of the personalization data is available from platform. So here, whereas if I use transactional messaging with Campaign currently, I need to pass in everything in the payload to Campaign. I need to tell it exactly what email I'm sending, exactly what mobile I'm sending to. Here, what we can do is take that event, we'll match it up against the profile with an Experience Platform automatically, And then we can use any of that rich data, such as propensity models that we've got, to determine next best action or channel that we want to actually go and interact with that customer via. So here I've selected something. I'll just show you very quickly how we can do that. These are things that are being personalized and pushed into my message template and campaign. I can very quickly go and find the fields that I want to just using the search facility. So nice and quick just there. So I know Adobe Experience Platform has a very rich data model, but it is quite nice to navigate once you've done that. So I click and save that off. I haven't finished all the mappings just there. That's available for me to publish, and then that's live. We have customers such as theme parks who are using this to do gamification of their theme parks. So they're using this to say, right, if someone's been to this number of different themed rides, then they get a badge pushed to their mobile phone. And that's something that takes that away from needing heavy development work and puts it into the hands of marketing teams. Another example just here is a geo-fenced area. So here, what I'm doing is I'm using that API that we discussed earlier. So when I hit a beacon, I'm going to use a condition, but this time the condition's a little bit more exciting than we saw previously. Let me just create a new version of this. Importantly, for transactional messaging, we've got versioning, which is perfect. So here we can click on this particular thing, and you'll see that here I'm actually calling out to the weather API behind the scenes. And so along this journey, it might be, I know there's a question around, what happens if I've got existing next best action models or that I'm using through various platforms in my business already. Well, one way we can make use of that in real time is when we're triggering an activity, like we want to use journey orchestration, we can call out to that platform in real time, say, what's the latest score for this individual, and then use it either to branch or change the messaging in this journey. The other important thing around sort of geo-fenced areas is, do we want to allow re-entrance? So this answers the questions around what happens if I'm just driving my car and I'm passing all these shops on the way. Am I going to be constantly pinged with messaging? Where you've got the ability there to kind of restrict how frequently you're allowed to go and re-enter, and we would re-trigger this journey. So here we're entering a geofenced area based on an external application, in this case, the weather API. We're determining the weather, and then we're saying, well, if they've got a mobile number, then we can use that, and we'll SMS them out. And also, we'll just for fun, we'll push it out to Slack as well, just to show a little bit more integration just there. And I publish this out, and that's available then for me to use live. So if I go and execute that very quickly, I've got a digital beacon, let's say, that's running just here. My phone's just pinged, but if I just show you just here, I just got a message through from platform telling me that it's a nice spring weather today, which it is, which is perfect. And if I wanted to, just because it's kind of interesting, it's vaguely interesting to see. Here you can see I've got on my Slack channel, what nice spring weather, James, 20% discount, which came in just now. And that's really mostly just proving that you can integrate that into absolutely anything. And that really wraps up this part of the presentation, give you an insight into what happens next when we have all this data. We can create our segmentation strategy. How can we go and activate it? And the answer to that is existing Adobe Experience Cloud technologies such as Audience Manager, Target, Campaign, etc., can have access to those segments through the people core service. And if you want to, you can then start to make use of the application services that are baked into platform and built by us on top of platform, including Realtime CDP, which will execute segment-based strategies in real time to advertising destinations, social destinations, and ESPs, or S3 buckets, whatever you want, as well as journey orchestration that is one-to-one messaging to customers based on user-initiated events. and I'm sure I'll see you in the chat pod in a minute. Thank you.
So back to the whiteboard. So we talked about segment-based activation and one-to-one based activation already this morning a bit. So James showed you first the segment-based activation workflow, which basically speaks to Adobe Experience Cloud out of the box. So segments from platform are exchanged to Experience Cloud, but also from Experience Cloud solutions back to platform. And from there, of course, we can then target these segments to Adobe Targets, to Audience Manager, to Adobe Campaign, Ad Cloud, and so much more. Then James also mentioned RT-CDP. So RT-CDP is the application service available on top of platform, which makes it possible to also activate towards channels like DSPs. At this moment, we have integrations with DV360, AppNexus, the Trade Desk, and a couple more. Also to people-based destinations. I think that's quite relevant addition to platform. It gives you the ability to speak to things like Facebook, like LinkedIn as well is coming towards ESPs, like you've seen before. So that's a segment-based activation. Then one-to-one, which is basically the net new functionality available from platform's perspective. So we've got the Journey Orchestration application service, makes it possible to build workflows with decision points, with A/B testing and so on. And of course, Adobe Campaign standards is implemented out of the box here. So things like email, push are available through that channel, but also custom actions. This is quite powerful because it allows you to speak to anything. James showed you the weather API and so on. Of course, we can integrate to things like Twilio for SMS delivery as well, but we also have integrations to more, let's say, exciting things as well. We have a use case around in-store personalization based on online behavior. So imagine in today's world, personalization online is quite known to customers. Basically, potentially every message on a website or a mobile application is personal already. But when you walk into a retail shop offline, then all communication is back to default. So with platform and journey orchestration, we have the ability to also detect a customer's entry in a specific store through a beacon, for instance, and then use journey orchestration to decide what the image or offer should be for that customer, and then deliver that message to something like an in-store display, to the use of a queuing service in the background. We'll share resources with you at the end of the call, but we have a couple of publications on that topic which will explain the architecture behind such integrations. So these custom actions allow you to speak to anything that has an API. Before we continue, let me pause here for a quick second to see if there are any questions. So I see a question around AdForm DSP. We don't have a native integration to AdForm yet as part of platform. We have an integration through Audience Manager already, which is being ported towards platform as it is. And a question on journeys. So yes, we do collect response history from outbound channel messages. So somebody who's seen a message, opened the message, clicked on a message, and so on, will be synced towards platform